Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Prep Life Podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Anger. And today I have the special privilege of interviewing Sandy Williamson. Sandy, welcome to the show. You can go ahead and unmute.
Glad to be here.
Yes. And so can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of what you do for those listeners that don't know you, which I'm sure there are not many?
Well, I mean, obviously now I'm retired from nursing, but I got involved in the sport back in 1980. I went to see a first bodybuilding show, had no idea it was the first Miss Olympia. Just happened to be that was a show my ex-husband took me to see, and I fell in love when I saw the Rachel McClishes, and all those women that competed in the beginning, the Corey Eversons and stuff. That's what made me, fall in love with the sport. Started lifting weights and competed for a few years. I didn't have this because again, bodybuilding was the only thing we had back then. And I just didn't, I didn't have the structure for bodybuilding. And so I started to judge locally, which is actually what told me I didn't have the structure for bodybuilding. And I just fell in love with judging. And so I started to judge. At that time, it was only a women's organization. It was the AFWB, the American Federation of Women's Bodybuilding, and the NPC was men. And then they joined forces in 84. And I was already judging, for the AFWB. So then I got obviously grandfathered into the NPC, and I started judging. I think I judged my first national show in 1984. And then just again, a little bit of history so people, realize where the sport came from. Candy Census was the first NPC women's chairperson. And unfortunately, she got cancer at a very early age. May Malika took over for a year or two, but then she actually moved with her significant other outside the country. And then in 87, I took over and I was going to help for a couple months, and that turned into a lot of years.
Yes. And so you were the women's head chair since 87. Okay. Wow. Okay. So what is your why for judging?
What is my what?
What would you consider your why? Your why behind it?
Well, when I first started, because obviously, anybody that competes or does any kind of sports, event, you're a competitor. So when I first started judging, I was going to all these contests and I didn't know anything about bodybuilding, the sport, nothing. But they asked me to go judge here or go judge there. And it was always at that time, when you got done judging, they would send us our accuracies. And so I'm a book person, I'm a test taker. And so that was, it was always kind of like, could I do well from a judging standpoint, no matter who I judged with? And that part, but as the years went on, it's the athletes. I love, meeting the athletes, talking to the athletes. It always amazes me what, and again, obviously I'm a little partial to the women here, but it really doesn't. It always amazes me what our athletes do in their day-to-day life with owning businesses, being full, housewives, being mothers, coaching their children's, sports events and stuff. And then they still find time to get on our stage.
That's awesome. And I know bodybuilding kind of did a lot for you personally. Can you share a little bit about what bodybuilding has meant to you?
I'm gonna get emotional, but yeah, no, absolutely. Again, everybody listening to this probably wasn't even born at the time, but when you grew up in during my era, when you were teenagers and stuff, everything was about models. 6-foot women, 110 pounds, and I grew up 250 pounds. I was huge, and again, we just didn't have the knowledge that we have now. So when I got to nursing school, I started to lose weight, and I was down to I'm 5 foot at the time. I was 5'7". Now I'm about an inch shorter, but at 5'7", I was 72 pounds. I had kwashiorkor. For people that don't know about it, it's what you see with little kids in Biafra with the big bellies, because for 2 years I ate pickles, diet soda, ketchup, and carrots. And so, kwashiorkor comes from not having enough protein in your body. So obviously that's where I was. At that time, Karen Carpenter, her and her husband were a singing group. She actually passed away because she got so thin. And I think it was really because of her that the medical field started looking into seeing a lot of young women, going in that direction, because when they actually thought I had leukemia because I was so thin. And then again, things happen for a reason. I looked out the hospital that I trained at. One of the internal medicine was a female. She had just come back from a seminar in Philadelphia because, I'm from back east. I'm from Philly, well, outside Philly. But they had just started talking about anorexia, this syndrome that they were seeing, in young women. And when, again, obviously potassium too high, too low can kill you. And when Karen Carpenter died, her potassium level, from what you saw in the paper, was 2.1. Mine at the time was 1.9. I could have easily passed away. But it was, get into bodybuilding in our sport. You learn nutrition, because that's the biggest thing. I mean, putting muscle on for women is the best thing ever. And also nutrition, because like I said, we grew up like, don't eat breakfast, don't eat lunch. If you could make it to dinner, that was awesome. You know what I mean? And obviously, and even in nursing school, you don't learn about nutrition. And it was really the sport that got me to learn.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh yeah, I haven't been that emotional about this in a long time. About everything else, yes. But it did. When I say that it saved my life, it did. And that's the thing, is I talked to so many other women, again, from different reasons, but the sport gives them that, that positive aspect of their lives that they can focus on that and help them overcome, whatever they're going through. So yeah.
You're just an amazing woman. I thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that story. I know that it helps.
I will tell you, I will never watch. No offense, Amy, I will never watch this. But go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
I don't. I have never watched a podcast with myself on it. I've never listened. If I'm worried about how I sound, I get my husband to listen to it.
Well,
I did. I can't. You know what I mean? But that's why I said, when I say I love the sport, I do. But it's changed. Like I said, it's changed over the years. At first it was health and getting myself better. And now, like I said, it just amazes me what so many women do to get on that stage. And I think my biggest thing is I hate that women are so critical of themselves. Because again, everybody that enters the show wants to be first, but you can't be. But you have to put it in perspective with what you individually have accomplished. Like, if you started somewhere and you're better today, then you're in a winner. And I don't want to say that, everybody deserves a trophy and but you're improving yourself. And that's what, to me, that's what this sport is about.
Absolutely. It's just beating yourself from the last time you were on stage.
That's the only person you're really,
version.
That's the only person that you're really competing against is yourself.
What would you say your favorite part of judging is then right now?
I mean, my biggest thing is I love, because I judge with so many, different people. I've gone from, Jim and Steve all the time, and Jim's wife, Debbie, who is an amazing, I will tell you, amazing judge. And, now I have the whole, well, really 2 generations down the road, with Tyler and Ethel and stuff. And it's just, I mean, it really is. It's the people that I travel with, that I judge with. But I love staying after the shows. And again, that's just a personal thing on me, because I always like finding out, what women do, or what our athletes do. Because we have, again, I don't want to just say women, because we have so many men that are fathers and have full-time jobs. And, again, as they get older, because our masters divisions obviously is growing the most, they sometimes, most of them are either helping or taking care of their parents and stuff. And yet the same thing, they still get on stage and, are amazing role models to everyone around them. But I think the best part probably is after the show. I love, staying around and talking to the athletes, and it keeps me younger. So, yep.
What is your least favorite part about judging, or what would you say is your most challenging part of your job?
Putting people second to 16th and under.
Okay.
Well, and especially at the national shows and at the Olympia and stuff, when you have the most amazing physiques and you're trying to decide, because every one of the placement, whether it's, the 10th place, the first place, I have girls that I've shown, that, like they were right, again, at the Olympia and at the Arnolds and stuff where you have that, well, on nationals, we have the 16 and under thing. And you're like, no, but you just missed, that 15th place. Just being 15th to them would have meant the world. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's always, to me, that's the hardest, especially because you get to know athletes along the way and stuff, and you interact with them. And, it's, when they're not going to do as well as they really want to, it's hard. It really is. And I think that's why, from the judging standpoint, we take sometimes so much time to, to evaluate everything, because we really do, especially at the top where you're going to be an Olympia winner, or you're going to, win your qualification, to regional pro show to go to the Olympia. Even just when we went through the applicants for the Masters Olympia this year, and you know what I mean? And not everybody could get invited. I think that's the kind of stuff, because again, what everybody puts into it.
So will you be judging the Masters Olympia?
No, I won't. I was already promised to another show, and that's one thing that I try not to do. Don't get me wrong, they did ask me, and I would have loved to, but once I commit to a promoter and then they put me out there and stuff, you know what I mean? I've always said that I won't, I won't, walk away from that.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be such a neat thing to have
my
this
God,
year
yeah.
as a
I'm hoping
Masters competitor.
I already yeah. I mean, if
I'm
I'm getting
excited.
invited next year, I already told Wings of Strength I'd be more, I would be more than happy to do it next year.
Awesome. So speaking of the Olympia, this year we had our biggest, or I guess it was last year, but it was the biggest ever. What was that like compared to other Olympias judging that?
Well, when you talked about like what's the hardest, that was it. I mean, you had athletes that had won multiple shows, and when you have 50 some, I think we're at 60 in like men's physique and bikini, there's a lot of people that are going to be in that 16th and under. And you start looking, and you're going, oh my God, I think I missed somebody, you know what I mean, and stuff. And then you go, but then who do I take out? You know what I mean? The quality was so good. So I think that, but also too, is as large as it was, the best thing is, though, it was so awesome to see that so many athletes got their dream to come through, just, to step on the Olympia stage.
Absolutely. So as far as the, like the new system, so it used to be, for our listeners that maybe don't know, it used to be the top 3 in points, and if you won a pro show, but this year they took out the points. Is that correct?
Yes, they did. And I think part of it was, so that the Olympia isn't quite as big. Because again, you have to remember that there is a promoter behind the Olympia, and part of the Olympia's responsibility is to pay all the travel expenses, you know what I mean, for the athletes. Yes. And what's making it harder in that respect, but also awesome, because now we have so many international athletes, you know what I mean, that are part of our organization. And but again, that increases also too the overall expense. So they're trying to limit it a little bit. And you know what I mean? So, but again, I will be honest, I know, they're trying to play with what's going to work the best. So will it be the same next year? It'll depend. They'll evaluate, you know what I mean? How did this year go? How did that work? Maybe we need to, to do something else, so, those changes were, obviously for this year. And, once they see how it works out, they'll go from there.
Did they decide to go? So there was one year that it was just only points, correct? Is that right?
I think so. Yes. Sometimes I forget, Amy, after all the years, but no, I do. I think one time it was the top 5, and then the rest was, from the previous Olympia, and then the points, you know what I mean? But then what happened is, because again, you also have to look from the organization standpoint, they also have a lot of promoters. And so when we were doing the top 5, we're automatically qualified. Well, then a lot of those athletes, those top athletes, never competed again during the year. And you know what I mean? So it was, they went to, not only the winner, just so that, that some of the top athletes do have to compete, you know what I mean? Which then helps the promoters, too. Because from an organization standpoint, you have 2 customers. You have your promoters that are, promoting the shows, and then your athletes, so you try to make a balance between, making both of them happy.
Yeah, definitely. What's it like comparably to judging IFBB athletes versus NPC? What are some differences as a judge that you experience? And then just kind of, can you compare and contrast those two organizations for our listeners too, and just how that is different for you?
Sure. To be honest with you, I mean, there's really not much difference because I know this is, again, and I always tell people, go to seminars or like listen to something like this, because the rumors and the false rumors that get started, I don't want to make rumors from like a gossip thing, but just rumors about how things are done. It's amazing how it changes just a little bit from one person to the next. And when I hear it at the end, it's like, not even close to what takes place. Because one thing is, I will tell you, the standard of what we're looking for at the amateur level is the same as what we're looking for the Olympia thing. When I have new judges sometimes, and you go to a show and you have, I don't care if it's men's physique, whatever it is, bikini, and somebody will say, or this happened at the USA about 4 or 5 years ago, one of the girls in women's physique walked out with a class, and some of my judges were like, oh, she looks bodybuilder, like she belongs in bodybuilding. And I looked at them and I said at the time, I forget who the Olympia standard was at the time, but I just said, is she bigger than your Olympia winner? And they all went, well, no, then she's not too big for women's physique. But sometimes I think when you go to regional shows, you get an athlete that is just all of it, is just got a great physique, and it overpowers everybody else. And new judges have a tendency to go, oh my God, that belongs into the next division. You know what I mean? Or, and it's like, no, you're still comparing them in your, the size, conditioning to your Olympia standard. Because that's when when people say to me, what are you looking for? I'm like, go to the top 5 at the Olympia. You know what I mean? Go to the top 5 at the Arnolds. You don't want to be bigger than, you don't need to be bigger than Sid. You don't need to be harder than Sid. You don't need to be bigger than Andrea Shaw. You don't need to be harder than Andrea Shaw for that division. You know what I mean? And so we're looking for the same thing, and again, I think sometimes at the regional level, it's a little bit harder because you don't get the quality, the depth, in a show, you get it. And again, don't get me wrong, we've gotten a lot of true novice lately that have gone from their first show to the nationals and then to the pro stage. But again, those are our athletes that are coming from an athletic background and stuff. So I think sometimes it's harder when you don't have, you're judging a lot of athletes that maybe have, like, what do I say, a little bit developed body parts here, but they don't have it here. And as a judge, where do I put my priority? Is the regional athlete, is he better just because he's bigger, or is the one that doesn't have a lot of muscle, but he's more conditioned? So I think that sometimes, at a regional level is a little bit harder for judges. I always say it's much easier to judge the Olympia or the nationals because you have, amazing physiques, a lot of them. And you don't have to decide so much between what you're going to, give more priority to.
Yeah, because they've already met the standard as a pro.
And they're usually development balance wise. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So you're not going between this guy has real good arms or this guy has real good legs, which, you know what I mean? Because their body's still not fully developed.
So in terms of feedback, I mean, sometimes with pros, I just don't know how judges decide it. So, I mean, they're so good, does it come down to sometimes the hair or the makeup or the tan, just little tiny things?
Well, I want to say because it can a little bit depending on how close it is, because those kind of things can give you a place. I've seen it happen at the Olympia a long time ago, and actually the girl that ended up in second came to me and she said, "Oh my God, Sandy, I don't want to know what I did my hair like this. I have no idea." But she said, "I hated it," and it's not that the hair, but it was she hated it, so that affected how she came across on stage.
Yeah, so that it factor, she just didn't have the confidence.
Yeah, because she lacked the confidence in herself because she knew she didn't like, you know what I mean? And like I said, sometimes to judges, we're not going to notice that as much, but we notice the change in your demeanor and how that confidence on stage. So like I said, you're not going to lose a show because of hair makeup. Now, well, you know what? Makeup is another big thing. I don't think hair plays as much because we have, women with shaved heads now. They're getting, that has nothing to do with it. But I think makeup, especially for, the new pros coming in, because I mean the new athletes coming in, because I don't, unless you're, around this type of a setting where you have to deal with the lighting, you know what I mean, and that type of stuff, you don't realize what your makeup needs to look like, how much that you want to blend that face into the tan and stuff, you know what I mean? And so that is one big thing that I always tell, new athletes, both men and women, like, have somebody look and help you with that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of my pros, after a couple of years, they do their own. You know what I mean? But by that time, they learn from the makeup artist. You know what I mean? That they've gone to, and again, just by repetition, getting on stage, they realize how much the lighting can change and that type of thing. So that I do tell athletes, I think is a big deal. All that little stuff. But usually, to be honest with you, at the Olympia, it comes down to the physique and presentation. That I think is the biggest deciding factor these days, is how, and pros make just as many mistakes sometimes as the amateurs, and you just think, oh my God, how can you do that at that level? But it does. How you present your body, because the overall quality of our athletes is so amazing now. How you present yourself can make yourself look that little bit better, or a little bit weaker. And judges have, even if we know in our hearts that your physique is a little bit better, if you're not presenting it, you know what I mean? You have to judge what you see on stage.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have some questions. I kind of put it out there to our listeners. So they had some questions for you from athletes. If you don't mind me going over some of those.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, being a judge, how have you seen the world of bodybuilding change and evolve, especially for women in the sport, in particular bikini?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, first of all, just the whole change in the sport. Now we have division. We only had bodybuilding up until the late until 1995. 95 is when we did our first fitness show. And then I think it was early 2001, probably you need JM for this because I'm going to be off. I'll probably on the news, but early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, we added figure. So that's one of the things that I do like, especially obviously with Jim Mannion, is he listens to other people. He listens to, because again, the people around him are the ones that deal with the athletes and stuff. And so you hear what the athletes, what they're saying and what they want to see and what they want to change and stuff. And he's always been one to listen to that, to the feedback or the, stuff that he gets. And so adding all these divisions has made it, a little bit for everybody. Whether you're just starting out and you're going to go in bikini, if you're, like Sid K, we have a lot of athletes that come from track and field, and they're more the figure type athletes, you know what I mean, and stuff. Yeah. And then again, even if you're young and you start lifting, you're gonna, most people are gonna put on size. So then if you outgrow figure, now you have another division. So that's one of the biggest changes I've seen, is all the divisions that have, get added in. And don't get me wrong, yes, in particular, obviously bikini has changed, but all our divisions have changed. It evolves with time. And, if the NPC would have stayed just bodybuilding, you and I wouldn't have been talking. So, you know what I mean? An organization has to change with time. It has to change with one, generation to the next generation has different ideas on what their priorities are. And, so I think that's one of the things that the NPC has done well. It's really kind of changed as this, as the generations have changed and what society wants to look, what they want to see, what they want to look like and stuff. And so, now we have a little bit for everybody.
I'm just curious, this is my own question, but what would you pick for your category now?
My God.
If we have everything available, when you only had bodybuilding, what would you pick now as your division?
I would have, at that time, I would have had to pick bikini. I came from, like I said, being 72. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have had the physique for that either, because you still, no matter, except for wellness. Well, no, because I could never put the size on for wellness. But for all the other divisions, you have to have a balance. You have, you know what I mean? Now, again, I was in my 20s, so obviously I would have had, I would have had to work and stuff. But again, coming from where I was, I had a hard time letting myself gain weight. And you know what I mean? And you have to. Again, one thing I think sometimes athletes, though, do make a mistake is you don't need to go up 30, 40 pounds when you get done with the show. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think it's going to happen a lot to those first time athletes when they come off, prep. And if they don't know how to transition, you know, and stuff that you do. But again, you still have to be able to, you know, at least from a female standpoint, you do have to let yourself know that you are going to gain, you know, 10, 15, 20 pounds, because you do want to put some size on. You do have to take the time to grow. And, but yeah, so, yeah, I would have probably picked bikini, but I think that still would have been hard for me. I'm much better behind the stage. I mean, behind the table, I love it there.
Okay. All right. The next question is, how often do judges disagree when they are placing competitors? Is it more prevalent in the pro league than the NPC?
A lot. And again, but it's funny because when I do seminars, I get this all the time. I get the East Coast, West Coast thing comes up every seminar I do. And it was funny because and this is obviously, and I've said this now in multiple seminars, but it's the honest to God truth. Right before COVID, I think it was the 2019, I did the Tampa Pro. And Steve, what happens at every show, whether you're doing an amateur show or you're doing a pro show? Okay, when the athletes are on stage, when we're doing, if it's a bigger show and we're doing the groups first, okay, judges are looking at who they think stand out. And you know, however, every judge does a little bit different, but you know, I put little marks on my paper. I rank people, you know, A to F if it's a big group, you know, A to whatever. And so, but then all the judges pass, by the time the athletes are done with their individuals, all the judges pass in who they think is their top 5 or 6, 7 or 8, if it's a huge class, you know, who they think are those top athletes. As a head judge, and this is Steve, Tyler, myself, it doesn't matter who it is, we're all marking little Roman numerals, and I've even showed it to athletes on our paper. As a head judge, the athletes that garner the most judges that want to think they belong in that first group, that's who we call out. Now, again, as a head judge, if I think we've missed somebody, I'll add that person in. So we get to the Tampa Pro, and I just had done a seminar where the whole East Coast, West Coast thing came up. So I said to Steve Weinberger, who I sat next to, I said to Steve, okay, I'm going to give you my top 6, whatever at the end. I will tell you, I swear, every time I gave it to Steve, we had the exact same 6 people, maybe minus 1. And now again, would we maybe have placed them a little different? Absolutely. Because again, the difference between those top athletes, like at a Tampa Pro, at the Olympia, it's so minute.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so then I got on a mission, because then we went to the Olympia and I did the same thing. And I will tell you, at the Olympia, I had the same exact top 6 that Steve had, except for one class, I had one guy different from what Steve had. Now, again, and to me, as an organization with that level of competition, that you're not going to get more consistent than that.
With that many competitors too at the Olympia, just in that example, that's a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, 60. Seriously, Tyler and I just did, we were both, you know, privileged to be, what do I say, on the committee for the for the Masters Olympia. And we had 340 people that applied.
Whoa.
And yeah, so I started, you know, texting Tyler, because we were going to do a Zoom call, and I said, you know, like, what are we, you know, how are we deciding on this and stuff? So he sent me his first 10 athletes, and I will tell you, I looked down on my paper, it was in bikini, obviously, I had the same 10.
Oh my gosh.
And that was out of like 58 or 62, I forget what it was but yeah, so that's one of the things that I think, from an athlete standpoint, that you're going to see that really came up, really is, you know, gotten better, I think, as the last maybe, you know, 8, 9, 10 years, that the judging is becoming so much more consistent on what we're looking for, because you know, everybody knows there is a subjective quality in our sport, just like there is in figure skate, you know what I mean? Because you have that artistic element that plays into it. But I just think that now, more than ever in the 40 years that I've judged, I just think that we're on a much better, a much, you know, more consistent, you know, look overall. You know, but again, do we disagree on first and second, or second and third and fourth? You know, all the time. But that's one of the things, you put your score down. We knock out highs and lows depending on how many judges, because we always use an odd number of judges, and how it turns out.
Yeah. So getting back to that application process, did they have to send you just their experience in IFBB, how many shows they've won? What does that look like? Or did they send you
No, they had to
photos?
Wings of Strength has a really great thing. They have to do, because they do a letter of intent, like why they want to, but they give you a little bit of history, like what they've done, obstacles they've overcome and stuff. And so a lot of, some athletes put a lot more into that, which tells me, again,
Okay.
tells you that they're really more invested, you know what I mean, and stuff. But then obviously I looked at multiple photos of athletes, from different shows and stuff, because you also want a certain level of competition on that stage, you know what I mean, and stuff. So yeah, no, it was quite detailed on the amount of information that we had, that Wings of Strength garnered, and then sent to all of the people on the committee on on things to look at and different things to look at. So yeah, it was really a hard job, just because, like I said, a lot of athletes that, we all knew and stuff. And again, there could only be so many, that they're going to put on that stage the first time around. And, you hated to see anybody, not be able to do that.
So as far as the Arnold, do they have judges accept those applications, or who processes
So
those?
Arnold's committee, they do that. Wings of Strength is, at least Wings of Strength, as far as I know, for Rising Phoenix, because actually I have that this afternoon. Rising Phoenix and now the Masters Olympia, they use a committee,
Okay.
like Tyler, myself, Steve, and Wings of Strength committee, you know what I mean? Linda and Jake and Alina and stuff. And then together as a group, we go over them and we decide, we think, everybody says yes, no, whatever. And again, majority wins, you know what I mean? But no, Arnold's committee is done by the Arnold's group.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So the next athlete question is, have you ever been completely stumped between two competitors? If so, what's the deciding factor?
Oh my God. Oh, yes, many times, many times, and many times. Yeah, I mean, even like if you look at last year's Olympia, a year ago, not last year, but the year before, with Jen Dory and Maureen, that was a 1 point difference. You know what I mean? So it was, do you go fuller? Do we go a little soft? It was hard. And like I said, the panel was split, and you had the top judges at the Olympia. It happened with Angelica. For me, it happened with Angelica Teixeira. And this is horrible because I can't remember who the other athlete was at the time. But in the morning, it went to the other athlete. And then, like, this is where I tell everybody, even at the Olympia, you've got to come back at the night show in that same best or even better. And Angelica came back better. I worked with her posing, I think, a little bit and stuff. But we rejudged a second round in the evening, and it went to Angelica, then not to the second place. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. Sometimes it is, and sometimes, to be honest with you, at that point, to me, at least for myself, it's the athlete themselves, the confidence, that presentation, just what catches your eye when they walk out.
Okay.
And yeah.
So is that something, if an athlete, especially on the IFBB level, I'm assuming, comes to you after prejudging, and do you give them feedback or pointers?
Not after prejudging. Nope.
Not after prejudging. Okay.
Nope.
So in that case with Angelica, what were you saying?
I would imagine her coach, her coach and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously. And that's why when you're at that level, you do want a coach that knows our organization, because obviously, maybe he tightened up. I don't even remember now because it was so many years ago, but yeah, because, but no, the judges we do not give feedback between prejudging and finals.
Yeah.
It's one thing we've never done.
Okay. So if you could go over your biggest pet peeves that you see from competitors, that's the other question, the next question.
Listening to rumors. It really is, because I just, again, I'm so much older, and there's so much more resources out now for competitors. You know what I mean? I mean, articles online, posing online, but now, especially throughout the country, almost every district chairman is doing so many workshops and for the athletes. And I think sometimes athletes just, like, I don't know, I think some part of it, they just look at certain things on social media, and usually it's the wrong stuff, or they just listen to people maybe in their local gym, you know what I mean, that they think like is the big guy in their gym, or the guru in their gym. but he's not really, he doesn't have the knowledge of our sport, you know what I mean, our sport and stuff. And so then you start in that, just getting involved in the sport, but you're already starting with bad habits because things that you've heard you take to heart, but they're not, you know what I mean, they're not really what yours is. So I always tell athletes, go to an NPC workshop in your area. There's so many of them, and I don't care whether you're young or old, you know, you're new or veteran, because you know, we've been so fortunate with the pros in our organization. Locally, the pros almost, I think every district chairman has a problem, you know, getting pros to come and help out. So you go, you talk to pros and stuff, but also to go and support your local show, because you'll see the process. Because it's so funny when I talk to athletes that are, you know, they're true novice, or that's their first time and they've never come to watch a show. They just look at the gallery, you know, on the NPC News Online, which, don't get me wrong, is an awesome, you know, it's an awesome resource, but it's still not the same as being there in person and seeing, you know, how those lineups go and how the comparisons go. And just, to me, it would give you that little less, it would decrease your anxiety a little bit than when you go to your first show, because you're like, oh, I remember seeing that. Oh yeah, I remember them doing that. You know what I mean? And so I think that's my biggest pet peeve, is sometimes people are not getting the information from the better sources, and yet those sources are out there. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Speaking of, you had a women's workshop this year. Do you have the date and place set for next year? Are you doing the women's workshop again, or?
I'm almost, you know, one of my things was, I've been really and again, for people that don't know, it came about. I'm not a business person, so I don't really come up with great ideas. But one of the things is, you know, over the last couple of years, especially through COVID, everybody kept saying to me, because everybody, you know, I'm getting older. And so people would say, you know, there's nobody to take your place. We don't have any women to take your place. I'm like, oh my God, we have amazing women all over the country. We have you know, Becky Clausen and Bernadette in Texas, and Mo in you know, in South Carolina, and Michelle Mayberry. We have so many women, and we have women behind the scenes, that promoters like Whitney Weiser, and, you know, obviously Whitney Jones is in front of the scene, but you know what I mean? She's also a promoter and stuff. And so I wanted somehow to make people realize, like, oh my God, we have so many women that are involved in this sport. You just don't know about them. You know what I mean? So that's how it started. And then I don't know how it got into a workshop and stuff, but it did. And obviously the first year was amazing. But one of the things that I always wanted to do, I wanted to move it around, because even though the workshop itself is free, you still have to do all the travel expenses to get yourself there. You know what I mean? So I wanted to move it around a little bit, so that it would give at least more local people, more local women that don't have the financial ability to get, you know, get on a plane and fly, or get a hotel room. So we're probably going to be, I'm not going to say it now, because I don't have time, but we're probably going to be in the East Coast next year. At least that's the way it looks right now. And then, well, I'm going to link it a little bit to the junior nationals and stuff. But yeah, the first year was amazing. Then Wings of Strength. And I will tell you, when I first, you know, approached Jim to add, you know, to see if it was okay. And then I went to Wings of Strength, because obviously they're a big promoter of women. And Muscle Contest, Tamer called me right away and goes, we're in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the first year was amazing. Last year at Wings of Strength, now we had LED screens, and I'm thinking, oh shit, now I have to have LED screens in every time I do a seminar. You know what I mean? Because they help me take it up another notch. But also too, and again, that's another thing. I don't think the general public and other athletes don't realize how much entrepreneurial is in the female part. I had 35 women, you know, companies coming there with, you know, vendors, you know, companies as vendors at the women's workshop. And that's another thing that I love about this sport. It gives, you know, obviously it does it for the men, but it gives women so many avenues to, you know, if you get on stage like me, and, you know, that's, you find out, yeah, it's just not for me, you know what I mean? But you still can stay in the sport, whether you're you know, in the judging part, expediting part, starting a business with, like, the Shoe Fairy. You talk to her and she's like, oh my God, see, I didn't even know what did I know about? And now she has a multi-million-dollar business. You know, all the suit makers, the makeup artists, you know what I mean? There's so many avenues. Meal prep. Renee Hershey with Fit Choice out of, Arizona. She started her own thing. Now her husband and they have a whole bunch of people that work for them. So
Yeah,
there's so many avenues for women to get involved. But yeah, the workshop last year at Wings of Strength was amazing. And so now I'm looking, to take it maybe to the East Coast, but it'll be the same time of the year though. I want it in someplace warm, and I also wanted it in January when it's a downtime. Nobody's competing, and the support I've gotten from the pros has been just crazy.
that's awesome. So tell us about your nationals too, so we can plug that.
Yes. And again, this is coming from an old person. Okay. So as you get older, never say the word never, because it will come back to bite you. Because my husband promotes, and I'm separate from, Spectrum Fitness Productions. He's always been into promoting. I've always been into judging. And so when Jim came to me and asked me if I'd be, because again, whoever, who was doing the junior nationals, kind of stopped during COVID and stuff. Because it was a really hard time for promoters and stuff. So when Jim said to me, would I be willing to partner up with, Robin Chang and Doug Green out of Vegas, I was like, I did not at the time know who Doug Green was, but I did know who Robin Chang was, and he's just an amazing, man. And there was no way I was going to say no, even though at the time I did not want to do it. It's been the best experience. It's, they are just two great persons to work with. I've learned so much. I've learned IG through it. So no matter how old you are, you can always learn something. But yeah, they're like, because Doug it helps administration wise. He puts on events, all over the world and stuff. So he's our stage production. He did the Olympia for 15 years with Robin. He did the stage. And so we've got we're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a great venue. We have a hotel that's right across the street, because the convention center in Chattanooga is huge. So the Marriott is connected to the convention center, but it's at the opposite end. So when you get to our end, we're in Hall A, and right across the street, so it's a small street, is the Staybridge, and that's full kitchens for the athletes. And also Chattanooga, like it's only 9 miles from the airport, so it's really easy to get to the hotel. There are tons of restaurants in walking distance. So, and we do it, so it's a one day for the men, in which obviously a lot of the national shows have gone to. So the men compete on Friday. So Friday night, they're done. We're done, because we started 4, we're done by like 8. Well, last year, I think we were done like 7:30, 7:45. So if you bring your family, if you bring your significant other, maybe your children, it's also a big tourist area. There's a lot of things to do in Chattanooga. But then the women are on Saturday, the same thing. We're done by like, 8 o'clock, 8:30 on the Saturday. So you have time to enjoy. And a lot of the, the athletes I knew after the first year, last year, they stayed on Sunday and took a later flight on Sunday and, went out with the kids and stuff and did stuff on Sunday.
Yeah, that's so nice.
And real quick, all the class winners get pro cards. So, because really we're talking about the junior nationals and I'm not mentioning the pro cards. That's why people are coming, except for bodybuilding. Okay. And we don't have it, we don't list it on our website because, and again, it has nothing to do with anything except for some reason in the history of our sport, Junior USA, Junior Nationals do not have pro cards for bodybuilding, both men and women. It was always kind of like the step. Well, most of our athletes will use that as a stepping stone. Like Hunter Labrada just did that a couple years ago, who did the Junior USA. Because you're going to get judged by the same judges that see you at the USA or the Nationals, whatever. And it's those two are so early in the year that you get feedback from those judges that are going to, if you're going to do the USA or if you're going to do the Nationals now in December, you have time then to go back to the drawing board and make those final changes. Yeah, exactly. So, but all the other classes, whether it's, men's physique, there's 8 pro cards. Obviously, classic has 4, women's physique has 2 because there's 2 classes. Bikini has 8 and figure has 6. So all the class winners will get, will get pro cards.
Awesome. And what's the date? I don't think you mentioned.
Oh, it's Father's Day. It's all right now. It's Father's Day weekend. It's always been. It's the 16th is Friday. The 17th of June is Saturday. But next year it might be a week later. We're looking to maybe change that date. But for as long as I know, when it was in Chicago, it was always Father's Day weekend. So Friday, this June 16th and Saturday, June 17th.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to come back to some of the questions from the athletes. So If you could give one posing tip, what would that be?
Practice it till you want to, till you get nauseated practicing it. But no, I think that's the, and again, I've never trained athletes. Like I said, and when I competed, I was never an athlete. So I never had the information that, athletes can get today and stuff. But my biggest thing is I talk to trainers and stuff, and they say one of the biggest things, because full muscle, I say this all the time, full muscle bellies and separation is always going to be the hallmark of the better athlete. In in every division, it's just going to be less in bikini, more, a little bit more in figure, a little bit more in women's physique, but the full muscle belly. So and I always talking to trainers, they always say the more that you actually, pose that muscle, body part, whatever when you're training and stuff, that will help bring out that separation. Because you don't need to be, it's not just getting conditioned, it's getting separation between those muscle groups. And that's, to me, is the biggest thing. And again, you want to start that right when you first started training, because that's something that it's harder and harder to get the longer you've been training, if that's not the way you've been training. So and that'll, that posing will help you. So the more you pose, not just when you're getting ready for a show, but all through the year, that's going to come back to help you. And when I first got into it, it was always, get everybody on, get them off. Now, because the quality's so good, everybody's staying on a lot longer. Men's physique, classic physique, women's bodybuilding, women's physique. Whoever the head judge is, they're keeping those athletes on stage a long time, because it's hard to decide. It's not, oh, this is the winner. It's not that easy. And so if you don't have that cardiovascular component to stay on that stage and do that, you're gonna fade quickly, and you're gonna end up dropping places because of it.
Yeah, that's a really good tip.
Yeah.
Another question is, can you ever tell if somebody does a DIY